Hey everybody, hope you're doing great today. It is 9:35, and usually on a Saturday I do a time called Blazing with Bo, where I go over some Blaise Pascal and do some reading. But today it's going to be a little different, because today is a special day for my brother and I, because this is July 11th, and July 11th was a special day for us in that we would go to a AA club, an Alano club, as some might know, and we would actually spend an hour or so with our dad and listen to him speak. And so this always was a big day for our brother and I to always reflect and listen to our dad share his testimony and his testimony of his sobriety. Our dad would have been, I think, I'm guessing it's 37 years this year, but it could be 38, so I could be off. Some of you who might be watching this might know it even better than my brother and I do, because you walked the road with him and through it. So our dad thanked a lot of people for his sobriety, and he always had a neat story of what life was like, and then how it changed, and what life is like today. He kept it kind of in those three parts, and he had some neat wit and humor about him. And what I remember so much about our dad in his kind of walk with sobriety is that he was always reading. And our dad left us that great legacy that he was a reader. He talked, but he always was a guy who read first, and then he would kind of talk later. And so he read all kinds of books, and our dad had such a interesting, neat vibe about him. But one thing he is he was an honest dude, and he learned to be an honest dude and kind of tell it like it is, and where he had flaws and everything, he just kind of laid it out. And there was a lot of refreshing things about our dad. And I would spend so much time just telling everybody about it. And I was blessed to be there when he passed away, and I still think of that night or that early morning all the time. And it definitely was a special moment, and he is sorely missed by so many. Now, I am going to read from a book that that is his, or his. This one actually is his. Was, I think, a friend of his, but my brother's done some great work with making sure that we have his original stuff, and we've copied, if not, we've kind of transcribed, if you will, his original sayings and things that he wrote on the sides, the margins, and things of that nature. And so some of his friends, though, have the actual originals, because he would have wanted it that way because they meant a lot to him. But I'm going to read step 2 from the 12 and 12 today. This is one of the books that I was brought up on and heard my dad share quite a bit. My dad was not a believer in God for many years of his life. And then step 2 came into his world, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So if you would oblige me so much this morning as to let me read from what my dad would have loved to read, or would have loved to read himself, and just in kind of memory of my dad. So this is page 25 of the 12 and 12. And it is step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The moment they read step 2, most AA newcomers are confronted with a dilemma, sometimes a serious one. How often have we heard them cry out, "Look, what you people have done to us! You have convinced us that we are alcoholics and that our lives are unmanageable. Having reduced us to a state of absolute helplessness, you now declare that none but a higher power can remove our obsession. Some of us won't believe in God. Others can't. Others still others who do believe that God exists have no faith whatever that he will perform this miracle. Yes, you've got us over the barrel, all right, but where do we go from here?" Let's look at the case of the one who says he won't believe, the belligerent one. He is in a state of mind which he can be described only as savage. His whole philosophy of life, in which he so gloried, is threatened. It's bad enough, he thinks, to admit alcohol has him down for keeps. But now, still smarting from the admission, he is faced with something really impossible. How he does cherish the thought that man, risen so majestically from a single cell in the primordial ooze, is the spearhead of evolution and therefore the only God that his universe knows. Must he renounce all to save himself? At this juncture, this AA sponsor usually laughs. This, the newcomer thinks, is just the last straw. This is the beginning of the end, and so it is. The beginning of the end of his old life, and the beginning of his emergence into a new one. His sponsor probably says, "Take it easy. The hoop you have to jump through is a lot wider than you think. At least I found it so. So did a friend of mine who was at one time vice president of the American Atheist Society. But he got through the room to spare." "Well," says the newcomer, "I know you're telling me the truth. It's no doubt a fact that AA is full of people who once believed as I do. But just how, in these circumstances, does a fellow take it easy? That's what I want to know." "That," agrees the sponsor, "is a very good question indeed. I think I can tell you exactly how to relax. You won't have to work at it very hard either. Listen, if you will to these three statements. First, the Alcoholics Anonymous does not demand that you believe anything. All of the 12 steps are but suggestions. Second, to get sober and to stay sober, you don't have to swallow all the step 2 right now. Looking back, I find that I took it in piecemeal myself. Third, all you really need is a truly open mind. Just resign from the debating society and quit bothering yourself with such deep questions as whether it was the hen or the egg that came first. Again, I say, all you need is an open mind." The sponsor continues, "Take, for example, my own case. I had a scientific schooling. Naturally, I respected, venerated, and even worshipped science. As a matter of fact, I still do, all except the worship part. Time after time, my instructors held up to me the basic principles of all scientific progress. Search and research again and again, always with the open mind. When I first looked at AA, my reaction was just like yours. This AA business I thought is totally unscientific. This I can't swallow. I simply won't consider such nonsense. Then I woke up. I had to admit that AA showed prodigious results. I saw that my attitude regarding these had been anything but scientific. It wasn't AA that was the closed mind, it was me. The minute I stopped arguing, I could begin to see and feel. Right there, step 2 gently and very gradually began to infiltrate my life. I can't say upon what occasion or upon that day that I came to believe in a power greater than myself, but I certainly have that belief now. To acquire it, I had only to stop fighting and practice the rest of AA's program enthusiastically as I could. This is only one man's opinion based on his own experience, of course. I must quickly assure you that AAs tread innumerable paths in their quest for faith. If you don't care for the one I've suggested, you'll be sure to discover one that suits if only you'll look and listen. Many a man like you have begun to solve the problem by the method of substitution. You can, if you wish, make AA itself your higher power. Here's a very large group of people who have solved their alcohol problem. In this respect, they are certainly a power greater than you, and you have not come close to a solution. Surely you can have faith in them. Even this minimum of faith will be enough. You will find many members who have crossed the threshold just this way. All of them will tell you that once across, their faith broadened and deepened. Relieved of the alcohol obsession, their lives unaccountably transformed. They became to believe in a higher power, and most of them began to talk of God. Consider next the plight of those who once had faith but have lost it. There will be those who drifted into indifference, those filled with self-sufficiency who have cut themselves off, those who have become prejudiced against religion, and those who are downright defiant because God has failed to fulfill their demands. Can AA experience tell all these that they may still find a faith that works? Sometimes AA comes harder to those who have lost or rejected faith than to those who have never had faith at all, for they think they have tried faith and found it wanting. They have tried the way of faith and the way of no faith. Since both ways have proved bitterly disappointing, they have concluded there is no place whatever for them to go. The roadblocks of indifference, fancied self-sufficiency, prejudice, and defiance often prove more solid and formidable for these people than any erected by the unconceived agnostic or even the militant atheist. Religion says the existence of God can be proved. The agnostic says it can't be proved. The atheist claims proof of the non-existence of God. Obviously, the dilemma of the wanderer from faith is that of profound confusion. He thinks himself lost to the comfort of any conviction at all. He cannot attain in even a small degree the assurance of the believer, the agnostic, or the atheist. He is a bewildered one. Any number of AAs can say to the drifter, yes, we were diverted from our childhood faith too. The overconfidence of youth was too much for us. Of course, we were glad that good home and religious training had given us certain values. We were still sure we ought to be fairly honest, tolerant, and just, that we ought to be ambitious and hard-working. We became convinced that such people rules of fair play and decency would be enough. As material success founded upon no more than these ordinary attributes began to come to us, we felt we were winning at the game of life. This was exhilarating, and it made us happy. Why should we be bothered with theological abstractions and religious duties, with the state of our souls here or hereafter? The here and now was good enough for us. The will to win would carry us through. But then alcohol began to have its way with us. Finally, when all of our score cards read 0, we saw that one more strike would put us out of the game forever. We had to look for our lost faith. It was in AA that we rediscovered it, and so can you. Now we come to another kind of problem, the intellectual, self-sufficient man or woman. To these many AAs can say, yes, we were like you, far too smart for our own good. We love to have people call us precarious. We used our education to blow ourselves up into prideful balloons, though we were careful to hide this from others. Secretly, we felt we could float above the rest of the folks on our brain power alone. Scientific progress told us there was nothing man couldn't do. Knowledge was all-powerful. Intellect could conquer nature. Since we were brighter than most folks, so we thought, the spoils of victory would be ours for the thinking. The God of intellect displaced the God of our fathers. But again, John Barleycorn had other ideas. We who had won so handsomely in a walk turned into all-time losers. We saw that we had to reconsider or die. We found many in AA who once thought as we did. They helped us to get down to our right size. By their example, they showed us that humility and intellect could be compatible, provided we placed humility first. When we began to do that, we received the gift of faith, a faith which works, which faith is for you too. Another crowd of AAs say, we were plumb disgusted with religion and all its works. The Bible, we said, was full of nonsense. We could cite its chapter and verse, and we couldn't see the Beatitudes for the begats. In spots, its morality was impossibly good. In others, it seemed impossibly bad. But it was the morality of the religionists themselves that really got us down. We gloated over the hypocrisy, bigotry, and crushing self-righteousness that clung to so many believers even in their Sunday's best. How we loved to shout the damaging fact that millions of the good men of religion were still killing one another off in the name of God. All this meant, of course, that we had substituted negative for positive thinking. After we came to AA, we had to recognize that this trait had been a ego-feeding proposition. In belaboring the sins of some religious people, we could feel superior to them all. Moreover, we could avoid looking at some of our own shortcomings. Self-righteousness, the very thing that we had contemptuously condemned in others, was our own besetting evil. This phony form of respectability was our undoing, so far as faith was concerned, but finally, driven to AA, we learned better. What a great section. As psychiatrists have often observed, defiance is the outstanding characteristic of many an alcoholic. So it's not strange that lots of us have had our day at defying God himself. Sometimes it's because God has not delivered us the good things of life which we specified, as a greedy child makes an impossible list for Santa Claus. More often, though, we had met up with some major calamity, and to our way of thinking lost out because God deserted us. The girl we wanted to marry had other notions. We prayed God that she'd change her mind, but she didn't. We prayed for healthy children and we were presented with sick ones, or none at all. We prayed for promotions at businesses, and none came. Loved ones upon whom we heartily depended were taken from us by so-called acts of God. Then we became drunkards and asked God to stop that. But nothing happened. This was the unkindness cut of all. Man, this faith business, we said. When we encountered AA, the fallacy of our defiance was revealed. At no time had we asked what God's will was for us. Instead, we had been telling him what it ought to be. No man we saw could believe in God and defy him too. Belief meant reliance, not defiance. In AA, we saw the fruits of this belief, men and women spared from alcohol's final catastrophe. We saw them meet and transcend their other pains and trials. We saw them calmly accept impossible situations, seeking neither to run nor to recriminate. This was not only faith, it was faith that worked under all conditions. We soon concluded that whatever price in humility we must pay, we would pay. Now let's take the guy full of faith, but still reeking of alcohol. He believes he is devout. His religious observances is scrupulous. He's sure he still believes in God, but suspects that God doesn't believe in him. He takes pledges and more pledges, following each. He not only drinks again, but acts worse than last time. Valiantly he tries to fight alcohols, imploring God's help, but the help doesn't come. What then can be the matter? The clergymen, doctors, friends, and families, the alcoholic who means well and tries hard, is a breathtaking riddle. To most AAs, he is not. There are too many of us who have been just like him and have found the riddle's answer. The answer has to do with the quality of faith rather than its quantity. This has been our blind spot. We supposed that we had humility when really we hadn't. We supposed we had been serious about religious practices when, upon honest appraisal, we found we had only been superficial. Or going to the other extreme, we had wallowed in emotionalism and had mistaken it for true religious feelings. In both cases, we had been asking something for nothing. The fact was, we really hadn't cleansed house so that the grace of God could enter us and expel the obsession. In no deep, meaningful sense had we ever taken stock of ourselves, made amends to those who we had harmed, or freely given to any other human being without any demand or reward. We had not even prayed rightly. We had always said, "Grant me my wishes," instead of "Thy will be done." The love of God and man we understood not at all. Therefore we remained self-deceived and so incapable of receiving enough grace to restore us to sanity. Few indeed are practicing alcoholics who have any idea how irrational they are, or seeing their irrationality, can bear to face it. Some will be willing to term themselves problem drinkers, but cannot endure the suggestion that they are in fact mentally ill. They are abetted in this blindness by a word which does not understand the difference between sane drinking and alcoholism. Sanity is defined as soundness of mind. Yet no alcoholic soberly analyzing his destructive behavior, whether the destruction fell on the dining room furniture or on his own moral fiber, can claim soundness of mind for himself. Therefore, step 2 is the rallying point for us all. Whether agnostic, atheist, or former believer, we can stand together on this step. True humility and an open mind can lead us to faith, and AA's meeting is an assurance that God will restore us to sanity if we rightly relate ourselves to Him. Wow, so that's the end of chapter 2 of what my dad would read in the 12 in 12. And man, there's a lot of rich stuff there, that's for sure. And wow, I've always enjoyed the 12 and 12 myself. But anyway, that's for Pop. That's for happy birthday to our dad, Patrick Arthur Ouellette. And that's what he looked like when he graduated, I think, high school back in the day. Look at that flat top. Looks a lot like my brother. That's how he looked. Or when my brother played basketball back in school. But anyway, it's great to do the little time of reflection of time with our dad, and a little reading of something that he would have read today. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. And we hope, I know my brother and I hope you guys have a great day. Okay, you guys take care. Bye bye.